Hello everyone, this is Ramlais from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, nominated on Patreon by Saphira, we will be taking a brief look at the Necron Lord, Trazyn the Infinite. This video will be a brief overview for certain events that may be explored in greater depth within additional videos in the future. So without further ado, let's begin.
I chop out the mechanisms of occurrence and study them at my leisure. The history of this galaxy is an open book to me, and my collection is the story of everything.
Trazyn the Infinite is a Necron overlord of the Nihilak dynasty who rules over the tomb world of Solemnace. Trazyn is considered a peculiar and eccentric individual by the standards of other Necrons, due not only to his obsession with acquiring artifacts for his own personal museum, but his willingness to strike bargains with other, lesser races in order to obtain particularly rare and desirable relics. Indeed, this desire to attain new specimens to display within his seemingly innumerable galleries stems from his ostensibly noble goal of being both an archaeologist and preserver of historical events, a societal role that Trazyn held even before being transformed into a Necron. Prior to the events of the Great Biotransference, which saw the flesh and blood necrontyr being converted into the robotic Necrons, Trazyn was believed to have been both an archivist and scribe, one charged with overseeing the mummification process of the ruling pharaohs. Little else is known about Trazyn's early life with any degree of certainty, as his own memories regarding certain events do not appear to match those of his peers. For instance, according to Trazyn himself, he was forced to undergo biotransference against his will by his chief rival, Oricon the Diviner, whereas according to Oricon, Trazyn willingly embraced it. Regardless, when the Necron race went into stasis en masse after the culmination of the War in Heaven, an event known as the Great Sleep, Trazyn would be one of the first Necrons to reawaken, prematurely emerging from his slumber by at least 10,000 years. This early awakening allowed Trazyn to obtain a number of unique specimens to add to his collection, perhaps the most notable of which being a number of space marines from both the Ultramarines and Wordbearers legions from the time of the Horus Heresy, with which he used to create a diorama reenacting the Battle of Calth. Trazyn continued to expand his collection over the next several millennia, obtaining specimens and artifacts such as the severed head of Sebastian Thor, the man responsible for overseeing the reformation of the Imperial Church, a clone of Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Emperor's Children Legion, a golden-clad warrior of the Legio Custodes, and many more besides. Despite viewing himself as a preserver of historical events, Trazyn cares more for the proverbial rule of cool over accuracy, even going as far as to replace certain individuals within his dioramas whose equipment, allegiance, or even species is wildly inaccurate to the scene being portrayed, simply because he feels they add to the aesthetics. However, while Trazyn has successfully acquired countless items over the eons, others, despite his best attempts, have consistently eluded him. The most notable in this regard was his repeated attempts to obtain the Spear of Vulcan, a precious relic of the Salamanders chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, only to be foiled time and time again by the chapter's Forge Father, Vulcan Heshtan. And even though Trazyn would love nothing more than to spend his days admiring his collection, there are times where he is forced to leave Solemnace in order to obtain replacement specimens, due to certain exhibits being destroyed, carelessly or otherwise, or to try and discern the cause behind his collection being thrown into turmoil. In the case of the latter, this would even result in him travelling to the fortress world of Cadia during the events of the 13th Black Crusade, where he would not only lend his expertise in reactivating Akkadian pylons, structures that were capable of repelling the energies of the warp, but also unleash several specimens from his collection to aid Imperial forces against the invading hordes of Abaddon the Despoiler. But such acts were not performed out of some misplaced sense of altruism, as Trazyn used the invasion of Cadia to acquire his newest trophy, the Lord Castellan and Protector of Cadia itself, Ursarkar Creed. Trazyn's various proclivities are not just limited to the so-called lesser races, for they have even seen him draw the ire of his fellow Necrons. This has resulted in Trazyn not only being forbidden from setting foot upon dozens, if not hundreds of tomb worlds, but also becoming the target of countless assassination attempts by his rivals. Trazyn, however, is no fool, for he often conducts his campaigns via a number of surrogates, imparting a portion of his very essence into the bodies of lesser Necron lords or overlords, suppressing their very consciousness and will, while their physical form is transmuted into a perfect replica of Trazyn's own. Should the surrogate body be destroyed, Trazyn's essence will simply return to his true body, or impart itself into a new proxy, an act which in part led to Trazyn gaining the moniker of the Infinite, continuously leaving his enemies frustrated at their failure to destroy him. And that concludes this edition of 40k lore for newcomers. If you like this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for more content. To those that are new to 40k, we hope you learned something. So leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.